Welcome to the Well Workplaces podcast. I'm Tom Bosna, and today I'm chatting with Dr. Natalie Flatt. Nat, how are you?
I'm
And
okay,
welcome
Tom,
back.
today. How are you? Yes, thanks for having me back on the show.
I'm well, thank you. Yes, having a lovely day. I've been thinking a little bit lately around in our business or in our team, kind of how we can work better together. And also I've been thinking a bit more about how we've been doing the thinking. So at the moment, a lot of people are coming back to work and they're probably finding that some of the problems they're working on are a bit more, or they feel a bit more complex than normal. So in our team lately, we've just been talking about how to troubleshoot certain things. So it kind of feels like, and that obviously is a segue a little bit into today's chat, which is all around different ways of thinking. And I thought there's no one better to talk about this than you. And so I've heard a little bit about diffuse thinking versus focus thinking. I think naturally when there's a problem, you kind of go, all right, I need to really bunker down here and think my ass off until I come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Let's talk about diffuse thinking. What is it?
So basically, diffuse thinking, Tom, it allows us to suddenly gain a new insight on a problem that we may have been struggling with. So it probably more looks at that big picture perspective. It more often actually happens when we can relax. So it's interesting you say that, we're so focused on trying to find a problem that we actually lose sight of that problem in the first place, and we kind of come to a dead end. And that's where people will then start to become really frustrated. Productivity can start to decrease. And we're not then being able to utilize those solution-focused strategies, or we can put some other people in a room, and they're all kind of focused on that one area where it's so important. Then when we take breaks and allow that diffuse thinking to then diffuse to see if we can find in different areas of our brain the solution to what we are trying to focus on. So it's a fascinating thing. Sometimes it sounds a bit counterintuitive. And a lot of, leaders and everything say, well, why would we take a break when we feel like we're gaining all this momentum? And it's amazing when you do are forced to take that break and to go and do something that also starts to increase, the other areas of the brain and other components, which we'll talk about in a moment, to then come back. And it's like a little bit like a light bulb moment. So pretty cool, pretty easy as well.
I love it. And I'm kind of in my team, at least, sometimes I say, we need to just sleep on this. I guess it sounds like it's that, and maybe it's just me being a little bit acopic and being a little bit overwhelmed maybe with the fact that there's a lot of conversation, there's maybe a few solutions, and we probably are just going to keep talking about it all day and maybe not get to the end. So that feeling like, gee, I think we just need to stop, have a breath, and reset here. And I think for people that are listening, they might be able to relate to that in a workplace setting. At the moment, there is that feeling that things are ramping up, and there's obviously a lot to work through, and especially in a team environment where the hybrid workplace is really probably still mostly the way that people are working, especially in a corporate setting. So yeah, that's quite interesting, Nat, with diffuse thinking. If you were to contrast that versus, say, focus thinking, which was that real attention to detail and really just trying to get your head through something, or your team's trying to work through something, how would you sort of describe the difference there between those two?
And you're right, Tom, like our brains aren't designed to maintain that laser focus indefinitely. That's just not the way we were actually even created. Barbara Oakley, Professor Barbara Oakley, she's a pioneer in the diffuse versus focus thinking, and she actually brought it back to, I suppose, our biological evolution. Whereas, with the focus thinking, we were so fixated on being able to get those seeds and to find food, and just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Where, or basically, then our diffuse thinking also then allows for, I suppose, that greater peripheral vision while we're picking these berries or, being able to forage for food, we're also then being able to see if there's any other predators or threats around us. So they both actually go really well hand in hand. We alternate this all day, and sometimes we need to acknowledge that this needs to be alternated. So yeah, you're sitting here, and we have those people, companies which understandably we're trying to pick up our game. We're trying to probably move a bit quicker to make up, dare I say, for that lost time, what is perceived as lost productivity. But you're going to hit a ceiling effect if you don't incorporate that diffuse thinking. So I love the fact that you're saying is let's sleep on that. But it's also just even utilizing that Pomodoro technique, which I've talked about before in another podcast, Tom, where, you might be as a team even focusing for a certain amount of time on a project and then walking away and, going to do something that might be going to check your emails or, going for a walk around the block, going to get a cup of tea or going into another room just to, listen to music. Like, you can get really creative, and then coming back into that area and then refocusing, you're finding there's a lot more productivity to then be had. So we can certainly incorporate both focused thinking and also diffuse thinking in there. The focused thinking, it really hones in on a certain section of our brain, and that area is probably more around that cerebral cortex, and that's what's associated with our memory and our attention and a lot of our awareness and our consciousness. When we're able to focus, we're obviously deliberately practicing or thinking about that something or that project there. And what we try and do is we give it our attention, our all attention. And that right part behind your forehead that controls the attention memory, it helps with decision making and the problem solving. So, writing a paper when we're doing, maths problems, even sport, like we're practicing a specific technique on the basketball court, dare I say, right? Diffuse thinking is always going to then happen in the background. Okay, so rather than then deliberately and consciously focusing on that one thing or that one project or that piece of that project, you're just thinking then about the bigger picture. So that's what I was saying before, like it's like having an app that you might be using an app on your phone, but you've got another app running in the background. With diffuse thinking, it isn't actually centered to any area of the brain. It's trying to be spread over multiple areas. So you're able to tap into a little bit of innovation, creativity, unconsciousness as well, which in turn can get you faster to that answer that you're looking at when you're trying to focus think.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. The whole that whole sort of idea of that, just sleeping on it and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You really, or sometimes that example that most people have is when they're having a shower, maybe an idea or comes to their head and they're like, oh, okay, that's the solution. It's kind of in that moment when you're not really thinking about it, perhaps, but it feels like it comes out of nowhere, or maybe it's a walk or something like that, and it just comes to you like, oh, okay, that's it, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. So I'm assuming that's diffused thinking working there.
Exactly, and I think as well as it's become like quite popular, especially when you do have a project, or even when you're saying to your team just sleep on it. Sounds funny, and I did this with my PhD. I used to have a notebook next to me when I'd wake up or have those light bulb moments that we can find that is occurring because of our memory is also processing in that time as well in the background. And sometimes we can find those solutions when we least expect it, especially when we're in that diffuse thinking mode. And being able to get up, and the first thing you do is actually write down what you were thinking of. I used to remember I always used to come up with the best sentences that I used to always need those joining sentences to my literature review or something like it. It always happened about 4 a.m. and I'd sit there and I'd write it down. And funnily, that's how Adam Chia, who created Siri on the iPhone, actually created it through sleeping on it. And finding that the notebook was actually really interesting, that he came up with all the concepts when he woke from sleep, and he wrote them all down. And he did this over months on end, but that's how he came up with Siri. So there's real merit towards massive amounts of success when you do sleep on it. It also sleep taps into the unconscious. So that's part of that diffuse thinking as well. Taking a walk has actually really gained a lot of momentum over the last couple of years, and moving away from, I suppose we're Melbourne-based, Tom, so we can say at those coffee meetings where we're kind of sitting down and, again, we're focusing ourselves on there and we're not really taking in, our other senses that we can. So there's coffee meetings, a lot of it's moving to walking meetings. And the beauty about the walking meetings is that it's because it's encapsulating all the other senses. So you're seeing things like you can actually gain a different perspective. And as you're talking, and you even might be free talking, or you're more likely to free talk, that along with the fact that you've also got your endorphins kind of moving as well. So I suppose that's a really kind of like a perfect chemical balance there, to be able to find the solution by the end of it. And a lot of CEOs have actually moved to this, but also when they actually need to come up with an idea themselves. So we've got a lot of, big corporations now that love to go out for a swim for an hour, and they said they always, again, at the end of the pool, have a notebook there because the answer comes when they're doing laps. And again, it's that mindful endorphin kind of lifting light bulb moments that they're getting through light exercise. It doesn't have to be a set amount of time, but it's amazing what we can do when we take ourselves, or we become a little bit more kinesthetic, dare I say. That also encourages that diffuse thinking. And also just taking a break. Whether or not we actively take a break depends upon your personalities. I like to kind of, when I feel like I always call my brain's fried right now, I need to step away. If I'm at home, I'll go and, do mum things, like put a load of washing on, or go and, go do something like in the calendar, or think of something to do to cook that might be a little bit more creative. And then when I come back to looking at my screen again, I'm like, oh, okay, I've got it now. And it's so powerful in that way. But we have to, it isn't counterintuitive, because we all know those people that can sit there for 10, 12 hours at a time, and then you have to question their productivity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Elon Musk does that, like he works, 80 hours a week. How effective is that?
Yeah. It'd be really interesting to follow him around and see what that actually looks like. And I'm assuming he's not deep thinking the whole time, but certainly a lot of time dedicated to work. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because in most workplaces, there's a big focus on well-being, and obviously a byproduct of great well-being or high levels of well-being is high performance. So this fits in with, I guess, companies or people trying to individually or as a team trying to get the performance edge so they can get things done more efficiently and faster. And it's quite counterintuitive to almost care less, stop more, have more breaks to then kind of get the outcome. As well as getting walks in and those types of suggestions, is there anything else that team leaders or people could do to sort of help activate diffuse thinking? Are there any other sort of hot tips from you on that one?
It would be finding downtime that might be really different to what is going on, even with the project. So you might, they'll be fixated on doing a lot of reading or research for something, and then being able to actually take a break, at night, or when you get home, or somewhere in between that, where it could be a book that could be on, crime, like just, some thriller book, something. It can be really different that to exactly what you're doing. So you're trying to create like a little bit of an opposite effect, dare I say. Because what you're also trying to do is deactivate that area of the brain that is really like that cerebral cortex, to give it a rest. Because once that then can recover, and also just allow yourself to process what you've also been learning, is a real important part of diffuse thinking. But I always say, do it and try and align it, with your personality. Where it could be, someone that may not be hugely, sporty, or just, might really value just to go and sit in a park bench if that's possible. Or go, just take your shoes off and just go walk in the grass, and have a book and maybe just give yourself a break from that tech. To someone who might, again, want to go for a swim and go for a run, also mixing it up. So again, with that, being kinesthetic there, is, we're probably coming into that time of hybrid workplace. So even if you are finding that the days that you work from home, does it always have to be in the same section of the house? Can it be somewhere else? Can you then decide to create and go for a walk, in the morning or at a different time of the day? What else can you do there? So don't be afraid to mix it up, because mixing things up is going to give you just a different outlook. I was with because I did a lot of work with Barbara Oakley when I was writing my PhD, and I love the fact that there were certain sections of my PhD that I actually realised now that I had different areas of Monash Uni, like in the different libraries, or I had an office at one stage, and then I decided to go back home, and I did all these things just to keep on, I suppose, jazzing it up and just and allowing me just a different way of seeing things. So, and as you know, even if you're moving desks, and just seeing something different, it could be near a window, or it could be closer to a door, you're actually seeing different things. And even that alone can really help with different perspectives.
Yep, definitely. And I think that's great. And I think as well, having some, when work gets full on and it's all that focused thinking, it gets to a point where it's non-enjoyable. So your brain's fried and you just don't feel like you're not really in your best playful mode, or you're not probably got a big smile on your face. So kind of, if those activities that you're doing, if they can kind of rekindle some of that general enjoyment, I'd imagine that might sort of spark up a different part of your brain where you feel like a little kid. I've got, because of the kids, because of our kids that we have, I'll pick them up later today, and there's a part there where I pick them up and then bring them home, and we just have it's literally like playing like a kid for that half an hour, and that just takes me completely away from whatever I was doing, and it's kind of nice to have that. Whereas I know 10 years ago or whatever, I'd just be I'd just keep working until as late as I kind of thought I needed to, because I didn't have that as a set break or a time out. So yeah,
you're so right there, Tom. I was just actually speaking to a colleague about that and again, for all those working parents out there, if you are working that time between school drop off and school pickup, you find that you can create that great focused thinking during that time, because you're in a time limit. So it is more of an elongated, that Pomodoro, but then to have that break, whether that is swimming or tennis lessons or footy or whatever you've got after, and then just to forcefully also put your phone away. And really focus on your children, or focus on just what that activity is doing, and immerse yourself in that. But then to come back, and then maybe even to get, again, if you can, do homework, dinner, whatever, but then to even come back to whatever you were doing pre all that is amazing, because you might then only have to work half an hour more to get to the same outcome you were as if you were sitting there the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. I'd find that if I need to do something at the end of the day or later at night, it takes me way less time, so there's less distractions and all that kind of thing. Nat, thanks so much. That was really interesting around diffuse thinking versus focused thinking, and I think for everyone there's probably a few tips in there, and maybe as for team leaders or people that are working in teams, maybe bring this to the team and bring that to their attention, and see if maybe there's a way as a team that you could kind of switch your brains in from focused into diffuse thinking, and see how it works for you. Nat, thanks so much.
Pleasure, Tom. Take care. See you guys.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.